Hello and welcome to the 3RPG Podcast, a podcast where we talk about RPG games and other stuff. My name's Jay Underwood.
And I'm Chris.
And I'm Sandra Rosner.
Santa is a bard.
Of course he is.
The Tooth Fairy is a sorcerer. The Easter Bunny is a rogue.
Is a rogue.
Yeah. Jack Frost is a wizard.
Okay.
Wait,
Here-
where does Jack Frost get his power from? Nature, though. Wouldn't he be a?
Oh, he's a druid. Yep, you're right. Yeah, no, Jack Frost is totally a druid. Yeah. Krampus is, I guess, the chaotic evil version of a bard. He's like throwing a lineman in there. He's just misunderstood.
Yeah.
a misunderstood bard.
He just wants hugs, but he doesn't got the charisma.
Nah,
Yeah.
I don't know.
You know, Mother Goose
Is a bard?
is another bard. Are they all bards? Are they all bards?
Is that the answer?
I guess.
He's a bard.
Yeah. I guess they're all, are they all bards? Yeah.
We need a shirt that's just like, just a blank space, ... is a bard.
He's a bard.
It's the answer to everything.
Is that a thing? Like having a shirt that has like blanks on it, where you can add your own thing in there? That's got to be a thing already, though, right?
It's sort of been going around on Reddit and stuff, right? Yeah.
Oh, it has it.
Yeah.
Okay.
A little dangerous to wear that if you're a public figure.
Yeah.
People just fill that in for you.
Oh no. But
is a
my
barbarian.
idea would be that you yourself buy puffy paints and you fill in what you want to add in there, right?
Oh yeah, I feel like there's like a religious campaign that did this. With bumper stickers. Like
MC,
it was like,
MC Hammerism.
yeah, and people were taking Sharpies to fill in their own opinions.
Yeah. So just like blank, like underscore, like a whole bunch of underscores or like underline is a bard, and then then you can add whatever you want in there.
People need to wear more like writable shirts, like that.
I
Just
think so.
like just in community in general, we just go around like writing on each other's clothing.
I mean, it'll all just degrade down to your mom.
yeah. It's gonna be your mom gonna kick me, or I'm with stupid.
Yeah,
Arrow pointing up.
it's the journey. It's the journey to get there. That's really the treasure.
I don't know about you, but I wouldn't feel comfortable with people just suddenly going up to you and writing on your shirt.
Writing on your shirt.
I like how Chris assumes he's the shirt wearer and not the one with the Sharpie.
Yeah.
Oh, because I would never do that to someone
You'd
else.
never do that.
No, because I don't want it being done to me, right? So
That's
the,
fair.
The
Fair.
Sharpie holders don't wear shirts. The universe consists of people who have Sharpies in those shirts and those who wear shirts. There's only two in this new world. There's only two types of people.
Which replaces the alignment system.
That's right. Which I think segues us really nicely into today's topic. Today's episode is going to be part of the workbench of D&D, where we talk about a topic, or rather, in today's episode, we are going to create from scratch a world in which our listeners could choose to play in, or maybe get ideas for their own worlds throughout the process. Then moving into creating characters to exist in that world, and finally creating maybe a short one-off or possible some adventure hooks that those adventures can then kind of take place in. So
this is not the tension building session. Right?
This is not the tension building section.
Oh
we will
no!
All that tension you had leading up to this.
Well, all that tension preparation that I did leading up to this.
Well,
next week.
We are all very skilled and experienced gamers, so I'm sure you can pull something out. And that makes it even better. Your ideas will be fresh and new and
thrive
and surprise. Yeah, exactly. Ta-da! You can't just ta-da like.
Sure, you can.
Willy-nilly.
We can.
Try
to stop.
it's Dave Attell, I think's got a joke about that where he something. So he's like, "Ta-da" is something that you say when you wake up from an all-night bender and still have like money in your wallet. It's like "ta-da."
Oh, that sounds like the weekend. Yeah.
So we begin with the birth of the universe, right? Uh, we must create a world from which characters can jump in here. Surely there are other paths to create, but let's start from that point. And the question I'd like to ask you guys then: Do we think we want to set our creation here in a sort of like Earth or Earth-like facsimile, a completely new planet, and then we can start going into genre specifics from there? Or but do we want it to be at least somewhat analogous to Earth, as in and the Earth of antiquity, the Earth of the future, the Earth now, or and the solar system that we as we know it, or we start from another starting point?
I think the first question I would have, honestly, is for our imaginary table that this is for, how experienced are the players? Because if this is
Yes.
their first rodeo, I would keep it near Earth.
I see.
I would agree. Yeah, it depends on who our audience is.
Okay. Well, I'd like to let me take a different angle here, because I think once we have a setting and characters, the slider that can be shifted from left to right based on player experiences can be more easily attuned, I think.
Okay.
If someone jumps into your typical like standard fantasy, like Tolkien world, elves, dwarves, that kind of thing, that's pretty much like kind of canon. I'd certainly consider that an easy jumping off point for anyone getting into role playing games for the first time, but I wouldn't consider that Earth related.
Okay.
Okay.
Do you know what I mean?
Okay.
So the question I'm asking about, is it Earth related? Is it setting in a world where what we know today of our planet, our history, Earth as we know it, is somewhat tied into the genre. It's like it's taking place in like a T2 universe where nuclear war has sort of like wiped out all of civilization, and then a new civilization has been kind of layered on top of that old world where there's like New York and all of this type of thing. So it's all tangentially related to what we know in the real world. Or are we going like Mordor, Val-El, and Gotham City, which is not Earth, right? Gotham City would not be Earth, right? But it would be more fantasy starting point, whereas something that has like a New York would be on Earth. If that's to reframe the sort of opening gambit there.
I would maybe propose that, like, for a player, like, starting out, they don't want to play in our world necessarily.
Mm-hmm.
Like, one of the things is they're trying to get into like a fantasy, something that's not their own world, something that something different from what they're normally used to, right?
Mm-hmm.
So often, like the Tolkien like style of, or the medieval fantasy is a good starting point, I find, for a lot of players. All of that being said, I haven't done a lot of like our Earth, changing history, or even science fiction related
Historic role play.
sessions. Yeah.
Like Sandra, we played the Call of Cthulhu, which was obviously set on Earth. I suppose I should, yeah. I'm trying to like just clarify my distinction there by what I meant by Earth and non-Earth related things, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
obviously we're still going to be limited by the confines of human image, of imagination here.
Yep.
Where obviously Middle Earth has Earth-like qualities like grass and mountains and things like that. So we don't want to go from a
Gravity.
completely, and gravity
Right.
and things like that. So we don't want to go from a completely open state, but we could like take the rules and start breaking them as we go along.
Okay. It's funny because when I start to craft a new concept, to me it's definitely we define genre and then you start defining mood. So we're coming at this from an almost completely different way than I normally would, so I'm loving it.
Yeah. So I think I wanted to start with that one only for the fact that I think the genre might start to like settle in with like the
Mhm.
the soil might begin to kind of settle and whatnot. You're working on sort of copy editing a piece that I've been working in the literary field for quite a long time, and it's I might say Earth adjacent.
Yes, very much. Yes.
It's meant to be almost like a surrealist look at Earth. But there we go. Okay, so we want to start with a more fantasy background. Yeah.
Yeah,
Again,
I'd say so. It doesn't need it doesn't need so much buy-in, I would say, for a large audience. Like if you do say futuristic, I think that there's going to be less people who maybe come into the game with the kind of skill set that other experienced players do. Where fantasy, I feel like, has been historically a pretty easy entry point for new players, at least in my experience.
Right, and
We've
then
all
well
seen
that
enough
yep.
of them.
that
Yeah,
hockets us right into genre then. Yeah. So are we just we're fantasy.
I think maybe for our first one we can do fantasy, but
Mhm.
later down the line maybe we can try to play with other genres, or not genres, but other, like, uh what am I thinking? What am I thinking? Like a I don't know. I don't know the word. Other, not locations, other
Milieu.
Well, don't
milieu.
forget, you can still have a fantasy in New York City.
Yep.
So setting
Yep.
and genre are going to be separate deciders here. So
Yes, and any of the things that we are saying, we're not sort of like we're not putting any kind of ink on it, as to use the Japanese expression, or we're not setting any of this in stone, as it were, and we're giving ourselves an imaginative starting point from which then to move around. Then we'll start seeing the edges form, and then move from there, right?
right.
All right, so fantasy, from which point we now have to, I believe, begin starting to create something of a schema of that fantasy
Hmm.
world. Are we picturing a fantasy world that's got your sword and board, dragons and wizards type of environment? Are we thinking of a fantasy that's sort of more grounded, as you were just alluding to, Sandra, of a kind of like, fantastic beasts where they're in these Chicago-like cities that are named something different, perhaps, and so on and so forth. The, Sorry, I think I misspoke because the Harry Potter series does take place on Earth, right? It's just
Yeah.
Yeah.
we're just all
Hmm.
muggles, and we just don't
Yep.
know the magic that's like underneath our skin and whatnot, but our skin under our noses.
Could be interesting.
In our
Um.
armpits.
Okay. Well, does anybody feel particularly feisty about an element? Sometimes if we just pick that one thing we're really into at the moment, everything else falls into place.
Mhm.
So, like, in just examples for our listeners, like, oh, I just really wanted to play with the concept of alchemy in this character.
Mm.
So how do you incorporate that, and how do you jive it with the person who wants to bring in a little bit of like tech into a sword and board, stuff like that? So
I love it. I love it. Yeah, throw it up on the proverbial imaginative whiteboard here, and
hmm
let's get some
Mhm.
more ideas out there, and then we can start mashing them together and seeing how they sort of sing off of each other.
yep. I think I actually kind of just said the two things that I've been, outside of my professional work, which is completely different from what we're talking about right now. um
Alchemist?
these two things have been, yeah, I kind of, in my own kind of picking arounds with a character I'm playing with, there's definitely a kind of a funky magic system, and an experimentation side to it. So I
Mm.
think my mind's been in that space a lot. But I'm also a little bit envious of another character's use of tech in a world that just isn't. Or let me peel that back. There is advanced tech, but it's not from his culture. So it has a little bit more of a slap together MacGyverism to it. So how do you join experimental magic to, MacGyverized tech?
I'd like to add or throw this into the pot, as it were. We've got multiple stews going. We'll find out which one is edible by the end of this. Is concepts related to food. I think in a lot of
Ooh.
D&D games, food is sort of just like it's it's something that's happening in the background. If adventure's starting off in a tavern, as many of them tend to. but they don't play like a central role in like the world itself. And so like let's maybe have that in the back of our minds as to how we might incorporate, food and I don't necessarily mean food as in like what we humans eat because we're in a fantasy world here, but like perhaps fuel might be a better sort of starting point then. So I mean, what is it that these people in this fantasy world have to consume to live, the function of food, to keep the energy, to keep the systems going, as it were, to give them the energy that they need. Perhaps their food is music, and they don't actually have mouths. They all speak telepathically through song or something like that, and that the way certain genres of song are kind of consumed, in a sense, gives various degrees of energy slash magic power. And so just beginning with food and then kind of layering on other aspects like that, so that is the alchemy. The alchemy is this sort of like transition of, the audio to a sort of like energetic, food like sustenance quality or something like that. Could be quite interesting.
That is very interesting. One of the other concepts that I had in one of the games that I've played, or one of the games that I've run, is in this world there was no like actual natural resources for like growing things, because the place that they were was constantly being bombarded by like kind of like the shadows that would just like consume everything that was in that area. So everyone had like they would mine these crystals that were made from like the deep depths of the planet that had like the primal energy of that planet. And what they would do is they would shove it into their arms, like jab it into their arms, and that's how they'd survive pretty much. That would be their source of energy.
Oof, that's brutal. I like it.
All right, so we're seeing. I'm starting to see something of a world starting to form in my mind here. So we've had something that has gone wrong. Obviously, we're starting to get now from genre. We're starting to sort of I don't think we're entirely settled on genre yet. Like horror might be an element. High fantasy still might be an element. But we're kind of zeroing in a little bit. We're calibrating within this vast spectrum of sort of like artistic thought, and perhaps we should start thinking about like what are the and I don't mean this on a what are the sort of active agents. I don't even mean the characters yet because that'll be our second segment. But like what are some of the things that maybe, as you allude to, with like crystals and shadows like that are sort of acting upon the world, that are creating difficulties for the residents of the world to deal with.
Well, a good question to define first off is, are you going to have a direct, conscious, with intent kind of force that is exerting this problem?
Yeah.
Or is it unthinking? Is it natural forces doing it? Is it a force that's not human, so has a completely different motivational set from us? So usually you can break them into those kind of three. It's
man versus
supernatural,
man versus nature, man versus
and man
supernatural.
versus supernatural.
Yeah.
Supernatural.
Man versus himself or herself. Themself.
So at what point do we just like roll dice and figure that out?
Yeah. Well, let's just kind of paint it in the background, because I think it could be slightly a combination of all those things in a sense, right? Maybe
That's
there
true.
is sort of some static natural element in which that causes, various degrees of belief systems to like take those things and act upon it in different ways and what have you. But like, so I want to kind of get to the root of this. I like this kind of subterranean crystals idea.
Yeah.
Maybe we could play into that a little bit more. So to kind of combine the sort of ideas, which Sandra's idea was alchemy tech, my idea was like music is food, and subterranean shadow crystals. And again, tear this up and adapt it as you see fit. But perhaps then these subterranean crystals, I'm picturing like kind of large, this purple things that you might find at like a new age shop, like
that's what they look like.
Those would be called amethysts.
Amethysts, yes. Like these sort of like subterranean cave-like systems with like amethysts, full of amethysts that are not like are earth amethysts, but that actually kind of like have a very subtle like hum, or they a vibration that creates sort of like a the qualities of it, like a struck tuning fork that like goes on, you know, till the heat death of the universe or something like that. That keep this planet, that radiate through this planet in such that like the entire planet itself has this kind of vibration coming from these central caves of crystals. And the sonorities of these crystals of various types, some of the amethyst are a bit more purple hue, some of them are a bit more of red and orange hue, create kind of like tonal sonorities of a like a C major chord or a D major chord or something like that, or a minor chord or a dissonant chord, and therefore we have maybe the startings of a magical system, or to go back to the food or alchemy ideas, something where that can be hung upon, and then used for a good or ill, perhaps.
So the first thing that comes to mind, and I know this would be character creation, but as creating the world first for the characters to be able to hook into, this almost begs the question of deaf, not deaf. Interesting, like I've never played a character that was deaf before. And how would you maneuver through that if these crystals are constantly humming?
Mm.
Would they drive you mad? You could hear them, if you could have heard them a little bit, whatever. Or
I
what
love it.
gain do you have? So
I
that's an
love it.
interesting little facet to explore.
Yeah, totally. Put a pin in that one. Let's bring that back up during the character creation
Right.
section. Yeah. I almost want to like take a like. So I think it's starting to form. I think we're seeing something forming here. But what I want to add, like maybe another genre element on top of this here. Like, so are the cities of this world, or maybe even we don't know the whole world, but one particular area of this world. Like, do we want to go with like Gothic, or like maybe is it more of a Western? you know,
So is it like a
Space
are,
rodeo.
are we doing like a seven samurai in caves?
Yeah, I mean that could be really awesome. Yeah, like well, so like you got like a Zatoichi situation, who is like the blind samurai and whatnot, but uh,
Now they're deaf.
but now they're deaf samurais or something like that. Yeah, within this world. So I mean that's entirely possible. Um, what other genre elements can we throw in here? Like a Bollywood aspect to it all. So
Oh God.
music is quite central to Bollywood movies and whatnot, and but you've got one deaf character who can't quite like um,
Now would they all be deaf characters though?
or maybe they're all deaf characters. Yeah, but yeah, maybe throw a folklore element, like a German folklore element onto it, so like a Mayan element to this, like. I still want to like. I still want to ground our kind of genre boundaries a little bit at the moment before either smashing them open, or just giving us a directional pathway.
All right. So these crystals seem to be a pretty central element to whatever story we're telling.
I think
So
so. Yeah.
do we want them to be um, do we want them to be part of the like inciting incident, why we're coming into this world in this moment with these characters, right? Do we want them to be the cause? Is it merely a survival mechanism? Like what space do we want these creatures to inhabit? Are they the baddie? Are they the survival? Are they the magic? Are
Yeah. No,
they
that seems like a question for the story section, doesn't it? No, I don't mean to be
well?
contrary.
No, I hear what you're saying, Sandra. Though, like I think some of these things need to be ironed out even before we get into actually building the story. Because what is the importance of these crystals, right? Are
Okay.
they the problem, or are they what they're trying to protect?
Right.
Are they valuable? Are they the only thing keeping everyone alive? Right?
I see. Oh, this is fascinating. So we can just see
Like
how all of our
resource.
minds are working on
Yeah.
these different aspects. It's really fascinating. So that's getting to why I wanted to get into like a more genre specific ideas, because that would help me get to what
Yes.
you had just asked, Chris. So if like sorry, what was the question you had just said? Again, I don't
Uh,
want to. Like, what is the
what is the importance of these crystals on this world?
Right. So what is the importance of the crystal? So like if we wanted to go down a pathway of like the Gothic element, well then the importance is going to be deal with the unknowable ideas of nature or love or doomed love or blood and that type of thing. Or if it's the Western element, then it's going to be something of like a moral ambiguity or some ideas of the difficulties with colonialism and all of this kind of stuff and so like the genre element leads to from my viewpoint, feel free to disagree here, of course, the where we could hang the sort of the motivations behind these things, or not motivations so much, but
So
Ontic.
if we were building this campaign for a group, I think genre would almost set into place with the players around the table. So we're not playing with that. So I'm going to post this to the two of you. Is there a genre that both of you haven't done? And I think we should shove this into there just for
Ooh.
funsies.
How about you first? Is there a genre that you haven't done yet?
Bollywood. I mentioned that on an earlier podcast that's something that I've never done. I've wanted to do, but the thing is, though, I feel though I don't know enough about Bollywood to properly create a session based off that genre. Like I'd have to do a little bit more research because I've seen a handful of Bollywood movies. Like was it RRR or whatever? Such a good movie.
Which I believe is not necessarily even Bollywood. It's like a different type of the subcontinent's cinema, that always just goes to show how like little we know about the rich landscape of that part of the world's cinema. So yeah, I would love to do it, but maybe we could like that could be a whole other craft work hunt section where we like just like go in and do some research before we risk like insulting some viewers or something like that.
So yeah. My apologies.
I can say I've never done a Western personally, so
yeah,
I'll throw that out there.
I've never done a musical, and so I would love to see how that might work. So a musical Western with subterranean amethysts, I think is pretty awesome starting point.
Okay, hold on. When we say a musical, though.
Yep.
Who is involved in this musical? Right?
Well,
like, are you asking your players to be a part of that? Or is that only a DM related thing?
Well, this could be part of the character creation process in our second segment.
And you sing? Yes, no.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. And you typically do when you're creating. But yeah, let's say we agree it's going to at least start in a subterranean area with giant amethysts that are constantly humming, singing something.
And deafness is an impact. Is it something central to it? Yeah.
And some kind of musicality is going to be within the mythos here. But maybe once you leave the cavern or the caves, or maybe the society within the cave has a distinctly Western bent.
Yeah,
this seems like a good start.
Oh, all right. Let me pause for a recording here for some quick ads, and then we'll get back to it in part B. Right. So to your question, Chris, that idea of like, okay, so what do we do? I mean, it would be unrealistic, I think, to get unless you're playing D&D with a bunch of theater kids to get them singing around the table. And then I don't know how long I could stand to be at the table, even though I love musicals myself.
Yeah.
So, like I would just be like, I can't even with this. I'm just like drop the mic and I'm out. You know what I mean? But it was your turn to sing. But this could be. Oh my god! Like
get into a bard fight. No, it's my spotlight moment.
This just gave me an actual idea for something that I think I might want to even design now, like a D&D game. Sorry, I don't want to say D&D. An RPG game that you play while you're at karaoke. Like it's like what songs you're putting on and like coded message within that, like that influence the story. Okay, Wow. Okay, that's
Oh, okay.
that's going in the bank.
Oh, yep.
And maybe we shouldn't even mention this on the this is something that we cut so that someone doesn't
That
jump
idea.
ahead and,
Unless you get that
grab it
idea
before.
out the door now.
Yeah, right. All right. So the I think a reasonable thing to do would be to like how in a general RPG session you have players who like the GM controls the soundtrack.
hmm
But in
Okay.
this one, like when a player's acting, you sort of everyone can kind of throw on the tunes that like their character because of their actions is sort of stimulating the audio universe of this play area that becomes almost like a meta level. I mean,
Mm.
and then in your session 0, you can kind of like make constraints of like it should be only within this genre of music, like so nobody puts some like death metal on. But I mean, if you're open enough to it, it could be really exciting,
Yeah.
And like though we hear it in our world as death metal, what death metal represents within the gaming world is like a certain type of like I don't know necromancer spell or something, because obviously death metal and necromancy is kind of adjacent, isn't it?
Yep.
Why, yes.
Intertwined.
um so I mean that's almost like a gameplay design factor there,
Yeah,
but
that's fun.
let's go into like, okay, who are the people that live in this world? So we have like we have like a bifurcated society. We've got like a surface people living on the surface, people living in the caves themselves, or even like adjacent to them. Perhaps the amethyst caves or something like spiritual spaces or something like that.
So it could be that the players themselves are not from this place or not from these underground tunnels or whatever, because that also it throws them into a situation where they don't know what's going to happen next. They don't know how the society works. They're kind of like learning as they go, pretty much, right?
Mhm.
That
I'm going to propose a quick idea, actually, because, I'm going to assume some of our listeners are going to be trying to figure out how to like map out their first campaign from this kind of discussion. So, can you come up? I mean, between the three of us, at least, come up with kind of like an easy entry, a mid-tier entry, and a difficult entry into this. So you're dropping characters clueless into these caves. Can you walk us through what a pretty easily grounded kind of a concept would be? So new players at your table, how would you bring them into this, in a sense, alien world?
Well, you certainly wouldn't come with how we're doing it from here with all these ideas. So like this is the sort of like this is the color, we're choosing the color palette right now.
Right.
And then all that information is going to be this sort of like behind the GM screen that slowly then comes out. And then what direction you take the story will come down to like post session 0, what story the players sort of want to tell. They want to tell that zero to hero story or the whatever it may be. So from that point, I think the entry point becomes more clear once you've got a like a specific character within the world rather than sort of like what type of characters are in the world, I think. So we're still on in the
Okay,
craft
I see.
world
So we're
rather
still
than
building the world, and then depending on what you want to do with that world, like the party,
yeah.
like the way that the party is made will determine like where they're from or
We're
how
we're
they're.
we're preparing the menu, setting up the buffet before we even let the customers into the house here. So like like how they come in and how they interact. But I presume that you may be asking that question because you've got like a secondary question in the back of your mind for that, right, Sandra?
Uh, yeah, because I like your example there. But let me. I don't feel like I'm quite representing what I'm trying to say just right. Um, it's more of a question of, do you find that there's certain types of setups? I think that would be a better word. There are certain types of setups that uh provide a quicker hook for somebody to get into this new world you've just created. Like, I'm going to give an example. So I've played in a number of like one-offs where you find yourself in a weird, gritty alien environment and you're prisoners. Somehow you got captured, you're thrown into the mines, a pretty typical
Yeah.
easy adventure, right? So that's one example of an easy adventure. So I was wondering if there was a concept you can throw in there that would be, how do you take that narrative and move it into another space? Like, how do you make it different? Where could we take this in an unexpected direction? Because immediately I think subterranean mines, okay, you are now like prisoner convoy, right? But
Within your
um,
schema, yeah.
yeah. So what can we do that is a complete turn it on its head moment?
I see what you're getting at. Okay. Chris, you want to field this one?
So like you could have the people from the place already, so they already know the world that they're living
Hmm.
in, right? You could have them as outsiders or as prisoners, right? You could
Hmm.
have them as the people that are doing bad. They're the people that are trying to take this city because for whatever reason we need to go into motivations and things like that later when we create characters
Right.
for this world or uh, and it really, again, we really need to establish who our audience is for this, though, right? Like, if this is like first time players, if everyone is unable to speak or unable to, communicate, through, you know, normal means, that totally changes the dynamic of
Does.
how the whole thing's gonna play out, right?
Yep.
And that will also determine where the characters are from, because maybe if they're new players, they are from the surface. They can still speak with each other, right? They can,
Hmm.
but no one else can hear them, right? Because they have different means of communication, right? But then if they're more advanced players and they have, or like more experienced players, and they've played quite a few games, and they're down to not being able to, communicate normally with their party members, that that's a whole different game. That's a whole different,
And a pretty advanced game too. So again,
right?
Yeah.
who's
Yeah.
at your
Okay.
table
All
really
right.
is
Well,
gonna like sink or swim this.
I do. These are great ideas. These are very important things to think about. Though I do see that maybe the edges of this conversation may start to be getting too overly broad here. So why don't we just throw some ideas as to what types of characters live in this world, and choose one that we kind of like to stick with. Which is our character group? Like, so I'll start. I think maybe one option is not to begin with like slavers or something like that, but like I see this amethyst crystal world to be a very foreign environment, but not to our our eventual player party, who maybe these amethyst crystals themselves are not such like hard like rock like things, but they're more sort of like gelatinous, and that the players themselves are sort of like almost like birthed out of them. They're almost like these liquid masses that come out and they kind of grow into like T2 looking things that can take on the form of various entities in a way, and so they're much more alien from a starting point, and then sort of explore outwards based on, and then maybe there's some earthquake that tears a rift to the outside world or something like that, and so there's an interesting starting point, and then the story becomes a conflict with the other, and that type of thing, and the sort of all the stories that you can sort of branch off from that point. So that's just one idea, an interesting starting point, perhaps. Maybe that doesn't appeal to you guys, and that's awesome. What are some other ones? So we've got, okay, the players are, the characters are figures from the above world, whatever we want to call it, that are sort of like trapped within this amethyst world, and then therefore they're trying to get out now. That's a different view of point of it. Any others?
I'm gonna riff off of you. I'm not sure how easy it is to start
Sure.
off as a completely new entity and then
Hmm.
explore the world, because it raises a lot of like initial development questions of the creature that you're
Mhm.
playing. But I like the earthquake idea. All right. So maybe
Hmm.
maybe these people live subterranean for whatever reason, to be determined. But an earthquake happens and now there is access to the top side that they
Mhm.
haven't had in a long time. Maybe they've been cut off for generations, but they came from the surface and it's all mythical.
Oh my god, we should call it the A side, and then the below part is the B side. So it's like a record that flips over, so like that goes back to the audio stuff. The A
Yes,
side and the B
the
side.
A side.
Just to throw in a comment, I did play a science fiction world, and believe you actually played a variation of this, which was a cyberpunk setting, where
Oh.
it was like I'm almost subconsciously reaching back into that, where you emerge out of these like bag filled goo, and
Yes.
you didn't know anything about the world, you didn't know anything about the character, how you play it, what are the rules, but you then slowly were gifted the information via the DM from the rule set, and so then you didn't have to worry about all this rule. So I was sort of maybe implying a little bit of that. So even though they start with
Okay.
something, they then like start, maybe they see like, and this is the players above the table see kind of like a list of kind of objects that they can grab on the table, that, oh, so I'm gonna grab the blue crystal, which represents I'm a strength based character, or I'm gonna grab the yellow crystal, and then they start forming their character identity as part of the character creation and as part of the sort of like the role play experience, from the go, right? So you just start playing.
Yes. Makes total sense. I think I got hung up on when you said born out of, and I'm like, oh, okay, so they're like infancy in their awareness or something.
Well, yeah, and yeah, that implies a whole another realm of things. Yeah, are they
Right.
born even? Yeah, right. Okay.
No, I can certainly see that being an interesting way of introducing people to the game. Again, new players might be a little confused, because like you're introducing like the world, but then also the people themselves are that different that there might be a little bit of disconnect. I find.
Well, I think from our listeners, we'll have a demographic of those who are like, this is the worst idea ever. So they're saying, wait,
Yes.
this might be something interesting. So, horses for courses, I guess, as it were.
Same time, I do find, like, as an experienced player in DM, this incredibly intriguing.
Right.
Well, let us venture forth, as it were. And so I'm seeing a kind of a conflict growing between A side and B side here.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
you know, the
So
B,
it
the B,
seems
the,
kind of man versus man almost on that.
yeah. And um, the B side, who have been for whatever reason relegated to this sort of subterranean world, uh, that's one. Have they been relegated, or like as Chris you alluded to earlier, is it something they're sort of like, it's like a fish out of water story? They've like, they've kind of like cocoon. they sort of like they've sort of like crash landed on the planet and whatnot, and that was like
Okay, so
millennia ago,
like you're
until
saying
another
before,
civilization grew up above it, right?
yeah, like you're saying before, you have the A side and B side, right? So I guess
Yeah.
we're saying A side is top side. It's like the
I like
Yes.
B for bottom.
Yeah.
okay. So meaning in this world there are two like groups of people, or two tribes or whatever, or two populations, and
Two
a
tribes
cataclysm
go to
happens,
war.
right? And the world is sundered, and now we have access to both of them, right? The people
Yeah.
that have been down there, and also the people there. You could tell two entirely different stories. One from the perspective of people on the top, and one from the
Yep.
people on the bottom, right?
Love it. Yeah.
Oh, you could almost do two campaigns that then whoop
Then
come
smash into
together.
each other. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah.
That's fun.
So
I
it could be some people leaving B and going up to A, or people going from A going down to B,
Yeah.
and both are going to be foreign and mysterious, because the people there have no idea what's on the top, and
Awesome. Yeah. I like that. And I think um just brain fart. Yeah, I like the idea of having the B side be having been maybe there for a much longer period. And then
Hmm.
the A side civilization kind of like moved in, grew up after the fact. Maybe A side and B side were one at the same point, blah blah, blah, or whatever. And now
Yeah,
you
I
you got you.
kind of like that they don't know each other's existence, and this
Yeah,
this event
yeah,
brings them into contact.
that's the inciting incident right there. This
Yep.
earthquake. And then what was the cause of the earthquake? And here we go. Now I think that could even lead us into section C, which is like now developing a storyline around that, right?
yeah. I just
Hmm.
want to throw one more thing in there,
Mm-hmm.
that they may share kind of like a language link that will allow them to communicate.
Music.
Kind of like how we try to use math to communicate to aliens if, they exist out there. We think math is the unifier. What if music's the unifier?
Well, they're pretty cool. They're pretty
similar,
yeah,
right?
they're pretty similar. Yeah.
Yeah.
Any waveforms, it's got that. Yeah, I think still in the back of my mind, I just have that crazy idea of like a player, like when it's their turn, putting on some like disco record, and then like the disco represents like a certain type of like a dancing light spell or something like that.
I do like that. That sounds like a lot of fun.
I mean, but then because you're having fun on like two levels, right? On the meta level, you guys are just like getting to listen to the songs that everyone around the table kind of likes, but then on the gameplay level, it's not actually disco, but it's representing something totally different. That can be quite fun. But, anyway, all right. Concepts.
Like if music is like a way for them to communicate, is it the vibrations themselves that allow them to communicate? Like, are they speaking through like tin cans and and strings?
Like I see it as a form of telepathy for the amethyst, for the B side people, but for the A side people, there's more of like more of like an audio. Or yeah, they're feeling the vibrations. They mind meld, or they raise their hands, their palms to each other, and by gently touching their fingertips, like that's how they hear, in a sense. Whereas the A side people hear more akin to like what a human being might hear as, right?
Now I'm guessing that they need to be able to see, though, right? They're not deaf and blind.
Right.
Yeah.
They may not have eyes or ears, but they can still see and hear in a way, right? We're getting into sort of like definitional terms here, but yeah, I mean, I surely they can see, but how they see, that's all nitty gritty. For that could be exploring. Yeah, that could be the first adventure. Defining what sight is. Well, okay, so to begin crafting a potential adventure path here within this setting and these two very distinct groups, do we want to go from A to B or B to A? I think that's a good start point.
Audience.
I don't know why I'm imagining that like B side being maybe the more disadvantage, like less terrain they could have just spread out in, maybe less resource. Being trapped in a subterranean area doesn't sound like ideal, maybe. So what if the earthquake happens, suddenly A side goes, oh, look at those giant, beautiful amethyst crystals. I need to make that into furniture. And they don't understand the significance. They can't hear the songs of it. They
So you're advocate
get
for
down
the
there
A moving into B angle.
yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think they would have the advantage for like, resources.
For a starting group, A to B, right? Because because there's less of the kind of like again, if you're starting as a B, there are so many more hurdles for you to start out at when you're like creating a character.
Oh god, I'm such the contrarian. Say, well, majority rules. We'll do the A to B storyline, but I was totally leaning towards the B to A storyline only because I thought it would be so fun for players to sort of like knowing that they're going to be going into. I'm imagining A to be more like a western, like we had implied before, like a real world place, and then the fun becomes this sort of like you get in time slip movies or something like that, a character who's sort of like out of time, who what's a cup, and like the players get to have fun sort of like interacting and then reinventing what they see, what they know as players object of what the world is, right? But then reinterpreting it from their character's perspective as to like what a cup is, or
I hear you.
But okay, so let's go A to B unless I've convinced you otherwise.
I mean, let me just throw this out there that if you're designing this,
Mm.
it sounds like you could design this both directions. depending on who's going to play the campaign.
Yeah.
So it's got reusability depending on who's around their table. So not that
Nice.
one's better than the other.
No, of course. Yeah, no, there was no judgment on that. Yeah. But I think I've moved Chris's needle though a little bit.
It sounds like playing B-side is the more challenging. So it's kind of like juicy.
It is. Yeah. You'd be coming from like the sort of like the difficulty curve angle here. So
Yeah.
let's go with the initial instinct, which was from A to B. That does allow for, I think the A to B directionality offers the GM more room to create the mystery of the B people within the game world, right? Whereas if it's the B to the A world, it allows the players the power to create what is the mysteries of the B people, right? So that's sort of what's almost happening on a functional level here, right? Like because they're going in, they're saying, no, what I can do with this thing is this, and you've got a more kind of group-based narrative game from B to A, whereas you've got a more GM sort of guided, administered game from the A to B section.
Being said, though, like we don't know what these A people are like, though. Right.
True enough. We've been mostly talking about the B side, the first time in music history.
Yeah, the representation.
Like maybe the A side are all like mind flayers, right? Like
right.
Right.
We're picturing like the capital of the Hunger Games or something, like
right. Yeah.
But no, oh no.
Mind flayers with cowboy hats, wearing like Andy Gibb like white suits opened up to like the middle button. You got that
Zoidberg on Mars.
Yeah. I can't do a Zoidberg. All right, so A to B. Okay, so this is I think the pathway is the exploratory one for the one-off. Yep. Right? Okay. It's you're starting in a familiar area and you're doing the Frodo leaves the Shire story for your one-off. And they leave, and the adventure is encountering fanciful things, Goonies, the adventurers, whatever, the explorers, kind of like going into a foreign area, encountering stuff, reacting, and then that's sort of the one-off, isn't it?
Yep.
All right. Now, for one-offs, one of the things you always got to keep in mind is that you want to keep the goal simple. You don't want to make it complicated. The more complicated you make it, the less chance you're ever actually going to get to it, because
you're going to finish it. Yeah. One idea.
And also the objective needs to be clear, like absolutely clear what it is, because like any doubt will create straying PCs, pretty much. So
yeah. Well, then yeah. So one possible sort of trajectory then is, are the B-side inhabitants malevolent or benign, right? Are they, or that's the opposite, is it? Are they good or evil? Are they a force for good against the A? Are they potential friends? And maybe there's different sects within the B group, but that initial encounter is, it's your take me to your leader situation. It's first contact. Are the residents that are first encountered in B good or bad? And then you say, oh no, they're good. And that's sort of like that becomes your cliffhanger to like, okay, well, what follows from here? That they're
side
good.
Question: how long ago did this cataclysm happen?
I think that's the start of the adventure. I think you start off your A characters just in the regular world, cowboys and Indians style, whatever, and then next an earthquake happens. Like, wait, what? There's gold down there, play something, right? It's a mine shaft explores it, opens up a rift to like a subterranean area, right, or something.
Chris raises a good point, though, because depending on where you're going to take this concept, a one-off through a full-on blown campaign, I feel like almost like the cutoff point of the two societies, the nearer they are and the more awareness they might kind of have of each other, is probably easier for a one-off. But if you have split them for generations, right, whole mythoses could have been built up about what topside looks like, and these are all little side mysteries
Yeah,
for
that's
your
campaign
players to
stuff.
explore.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. So having them be a bit closer to to that separation point, probably a lot easier for the one.
Hmm.
So this is day 0.
Yes.
Yeah.
So you get some like kind of old timey prospector, out there panning for gold, comes back, and then this had happened maybe 20, 30 years before the one-off start, and for whatever reason he found one of these kind of like little amethyst crystals, these gooey amethyst crystals that like at times it's sort of crystal, at times it's more of a silly putty type of texture. He doesn't know, but it's his prized artifact. Doesn't let anyone see it. Doesn't let anyone touch it. Weird, it's unique, but it's sort of like his little claim to fame. But oh no, other people in the village say he's the old kook that doesn't ever have anything. He just likes telling a yarn, right? Differences introduce our characters. They can sort of believe them, but they want to kind of confirm, right? So they start heading down these old mine shafts to find out where remnants of an old earthquake. What happened here? Who the hell? That's that maybe is the ultimate reveal at the end, like what maybe was the cause of the earthquake or something like that. And encountering the people, whether they're good or bad, and then finding the reveal as to what the earthquake may have been, and then either proving the prospector right. He believes that they're a force for good, or proving him wrong. No, they're a force for evil, leading to maybe a big climactic having to defend the city from this now B-side invasion, as who now realize that we've got sort of like a this cancerous force coming down and threatening our civilization or something like that end scene.
Should have just left good enough alone.
That's right. Yeah, I'm quite liking that. It's really unique and new and interesting.
Yeah.
It's
I mean,
like
I'm ready to sit around the table for that.
yeah, we had like Cowboys versus Aliens. We have Cowboys versus Flubber.
Oh my god. Still would play it even with that name.
Yeah. Let's explore then a little bit what might be what if might be like a reveal then. What might be like the twist slash reveal slash kind of like ending to this one off,
Hmm.
or artifacts that they might find along the way, as it were.
Well, I feel like the question that would hover even in a one-off for me is what drove these beings to be underground? If I'm living on the surface just fine, why
Hmm.
aren't they? So to me, I think the whole mystery of this is like why not up here where it feels easier?
Not what are they, but like why are they?
Why are they? Yeah, because
Yeah.
what are they seems a much larger question. You get
Mm.
into like society building like that. So yeah.
The first thing that popped into my mind was something of though I find it would more elicit a collective groan around the table at the end, would be something akin to M. Night Shyamalan's The Village. So this sort of like
Yeah.
cowboy world is actually just in a bit of like, so like no, civilization has moved beyond. So like we human beings have evolved into this sort of these amethyst creatures, like way in the super, but like this place has stayed in sort of like 18th century Wild West. But then what you could do then is, as the adventurers sort of like begin to descend into this world of vibrations, so that slowly modernize the soundtrack, starting from like your like 1910s, like late 18th century kind of like prospecting like songs, like yeehaw, all that kind of stuff, and then slowly go through like in different permutations, like go pivot to like Baroque music, and then pivot to sort of like like disco again, and pivot to like 90s Alanis Morissette records, and then next thing you know you're playing like sci-fi stories by the end, and like it's like the layers of like civilization that have like risen and fallen over are explored, and that can be really fun in a way. Like then the things that they find along the way, it almost becomes like a B to A story in reverse, because now the A people are starting to realize like, oh, what's this, Walkman, like what's that? You know what I mean?
You
um
better set aside a whole day for that one, for that
I,
journey.
I kind
Yeah.
of want to
Holy smokes.
I kind of want to play this game now.
There's
Okay,
a
but
small tiny part of me that just wants to be such a terrible like DM and just be like, Oh yeah, all along the B side people are just like a big ant farm, and the A side is just them watching them.
Yeah. Oh,
Like
right.
some
Yeah.
kind of like zoo-esque kind of thing. Oh no, the ants have escaped.
And the prospector was sort of like a Wizard of Oz type figure who was like playing but it's like Wizard of Oz in reverse. So he was like playing like he was the sort of like the old kook from town, but actually he's like the mastermind who was like, yes, I got
Oh,
you
that
down there.
bastard.
And then you have like the tragic ending where the players who come down there now become like trapped and they become eventual like ooze people of the amethysts,
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
something like that. Whoa,
And
there's
you
so
get
many.
to play those things in one-offs. You get to be that like, a campaign has to have, like, a satisfying ending, right? Even if you have a total, like, total party wipe, it's like, there's still, like, satisfaction of you're unraveling the mystery. But I think in one-offs, you get to play that little snarky end surprise.
Just
Everyone kinda,
make
like,
sure
loves
you
it.
let your first time players know that that could happen, though, right?
Well, so yeah,
Always.
I think I think I have a fix for this, this will be part of the buy-in before everyone starts. Is
Kill
Yep.
them all off
you
anyway.
have no, you have all these ideas, all these possible endings to your story, right? And then you have everybody like secretly kind of write down on it, and everyone will know because everyone else is they're doing. I'm writing things secretly. Well, like okay, of these three options. Do you want the horror ending, the silly ending, the sort of the
Ah,
adventure, the heroic ending, and they check off a box, and you just collect all of those, see which one gets like sort of the most votes, and then that sort of like locks it in,
throw 'em
right?
away and give them the horror ending
But,
anyway.
but no one's gonna sort of, but yeah,
And then after they're like, "Did you
How
vote for
meta.
the horror ending?" "No, I didn't vote
yeah.
for it." "Did you?" "No."
Well, you that's
Terrible.
you joke, but I really think that like that happens more often than not from a GM perspective. I think that oftentimes players think that they want one thing, you
Mm,
find themselves collectively moving into another direction, and then rather than like having to force like the silly ending that they said they wanted, they seem to be kind of gravitating towards the more kind of like horror ending. Then the GM just
true,
allows for
true.
that, and then you just don't even let off that like, oh, that was it the whole time, and then just like crumple up those papers and quickly throw them away.
Yeah.
Eat them to your goat.
Yeah, quickly eat them. Yeah, yeah.
My trusty goat's always here to eat the answers.
I, I don't know, guys. As silly as it is, I really like that idea of going through all the different
Yeah.
music and then finding all these artifacts from like the 80s, 90s, and today, they find like a best of.
I just want to listen to the soundtrack now. Let's assemble
Yeah,
the soundtrack like right now.
Alan Parsons' project would definitely be part of it. And just like working your way through could be just like a really fun, unique gaming experience. That doesn't encounter the Conan or Skyrim soundtrack for once. Like. um, but yeah. Um, anyway, I think listeners will have certainly a wealth of ideas in which to take it themselves, but they're probably thinking about their own ideas and where to take these ideas and agreeing with us and disagreeing with us in various idea ways here.
Mm.
We
Chris,
made a darn good one-off.
I think we did make a darn good one off from nothing. Now this
Yeah.
exists. Synthesis, right?
Oof.
Any final statements, comments, questions, arguments?
I would throw in, especially if you're looking to the one-off. Like this is the debate between short story and long form outside of TTRPG. As much if you are a beloved world builder, you're gonna have to put that on the shelf. You're gonna have to maybe almost make a one-off version and a campaign version. Because if you get too far into the mythos, the religions, this that, it's never gonna be a one-off. And that's fine.
Oh,
Some great campaigns come out of a one-off that just won't end. But
Mhm.
if the goal is a one-off, be really careful about overdoing the world.
It more often
yeah.
than not happens, right? Yeah, it starts off with a one-off idea and then nothing ends, right? How many one-offs have you
Yup.
been to where you just
So
like, oh, well,
many.
that didn't end, that
So
didn't
many.
end? Yeah.
I am notorious for that because I love world building.
I know.
I have made, I think, like 12 one-offs, and I've only actually successfully done a one-off like 4 times, maybe.
Yeah.
So you're kind of like when somebody is like a foster for a dog and they fail and wind up keeping the dog. You're like a one-off failure foster person.
Wait, what? He's
I
George
love
R.
it.
R. Martin. He's got an idea for a story, where Ned Stark dies at the end, but then it goes on to like just
Never
end.
happened.
You introduced too many
Yeah.
characters.
They're all good. They're all good. I need to see where they go. How about you, Chris? What would you say about building a one-off?
Building one off is not easy for me because there's just too much I want to do, and it's you have to keep it so simple, and you got to keep it moving constantly. And I think those are the things that I don't like to do.
So not a short story writer is what I'm hearing.
No.
You're aware of them though, like you said, like you have to have just like that one simple idea and just like really just focus everything on that. One simple moral choice that it comes down to, one simple little path.
Whenever I'm doing a one-off, I need also kind of like a list of things for me to avoid, because I will always steer towards them. Like I'll always veer towards like, oh, let them do this and let them do that. But you got to keep it short and simple. And yeah, it just.
I've heard the term theme park, and I hate that. But in a sense, if you kind of just put that in the very back of your mind, you're like, right, no, it is a curated experience. It's not a explore the world experience.
Yeah.
And more often than not, the problem that and this is I think every player who's been at a few sessions that was claimed to be one-offs and didn't become them silently screams this, is basically get to the point, because like GMs will want to like let their players kind of like sit in that character development space, but no, just give them the hook right off the bat and just start off the adventure. They don't get to like, hi, my name is, and explain your character. No. Like let it come up as part of the things in the moment. You don't have to do all that preamble stuff, which is like
no prologue.
It's like the first 2 hours of every like 4-hour session is just that, and then you got like the last 45 minutes where everything's gonna happen real quick, and it's just like, oh come on, just start with a cold open.
Get right in it.
Get in there, and then exactly.
Same advice for writing. Get right in it.
Yeah.
That being said, though, I don't remember any of my one-off characters.
Oh, really?
The campaigns offer much more of the emotional weight to them and stuff like that, but I believe that we're getting into discussions for another
Absolutely.
Let us end with this then. So we've got our sort of our world here. What do we call it? Let's give it a title, because once you give something a title, it sort of actualizes itself. It becomes a thing in the universe, right? So
and then it becomes something that I have to draw out.
That's it.
Tab A into slot B.
Yeah.
Terrible name. Oh, you wanted a good name. Never mind.
Was that your answer? That's going on the record. I'm not editing that out. Tab A into slot B. Come on.
You did not say you wanted a good title. I was starting with a bad one.
I see.
God, I feel like you had one
Recordia.
Yeah. Record earlier? Wait, is that you?
No, Recordia.
Oh, Recordia. Recordia.
All I can think of was those little plastic flute things we would get in 5th grade.
I was thinking of like kind of like as record, but Recordia.
Yeah.
Record, like side A.
It's definitely better than mine.
I was trying to think of something like vinyl, but like spelled like VINE. ILL. Jesus.
Throw in a couple apostrophes there and an H, a random silent H.
Yeah.
We definitely invite the listeners to come up with something far better.
Yeah, put it in the comments down below, please. Help us out. Yeah, we're dying over here. I'm dying. I'm freaking dying over here.
Dying over here.
All right, guys. I guess that is up for this week's episode. See y'all next week, right?
Yep.
See you. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.